My family called me the useless one. Then I built a tech company worth millions. Hopeless dreamer, always chasing clouds, my uncle scoffed. His words sliced through the quiet hum of the backyard BBQ, drawing glances from cousins who quickly returned to their burgers and beers. I stood frozen, clutching the award plaque I had brought to share. Best Emerging Innovator Pacific Northwest Tech Conference. But under their gaze, it felt more like a child's participation ribbon. My name is Jenna Rayner, and at age 34, I've spent most of my life hearing versions of that phrase. Growing up in Spokane, Washington, under the ever-present glow of my cousin Eric's spotlight, was like shouting into a canyon and hearing nothing back. Eric, the Ivy League graduate and rising corporate star, was their pride. His every move sparked applause. My efforts? Dismissed as hobbies, distractions, cute attempts at success. Uncle Mike, I wanted to share some news about the app launch. I tried, voice tight. Jenna, enough, he sighed, as if I were a telemarketer calling during dinner. Eric just closed a partnership with Tesla. Can we talk about real achievements for a second? My mother looked at her feet. Aunt Diane smiled in that pitying way, patting my arm. You were always great with arts and crafts, sweetheart. Remember that glitter phase you went through? Glitter phase? She meant my wearable neurotech prototypes. My startup, Synapse Loop, had gone from scrappy basement tinkering to a team of 7 engineers. But to them, I was still the girl with pipe cleaners and glue. I stepped away from the patio and into the kitchen where I pulled out my phone. A text from Avi, my co-founder, lit up the screen. EAC pitch locked for Friday. They're flying up from San Francisco. I typed back. Not telling the family, they wouldn't get it. What I didn't say, they never would, until they had no choice. I took a breath, returned to the table, and nodded through another round of Eric worship. But behind my polite smile, something hardened. They saw a daydreamer. They had no idea I was about to close a $4,200,000 funding round and take Synapse Loop national. Let them laugh. They'd remember this day. But next time, I wouldn't be sitting on the sidelines. It'd be the headline. Now, we occupied nearly half a floor in a renovated textile warehouse turned startup hub on the east side of Spokane. 15 employees, most of them recent grads or scrappy engineers like I used to be, were huddled over terminals, tweaking code and optimizing our neural feedback models. Avi looked up from his dual monitors as I walked in. He didn't need to ask. Family BBQ blues again, he said, handing me a coffee before I even reached my desk. Same script, different day, I muttered, taking a grateful sip. Eric just landed some cross-branding deal with Tesla and suddenly he's the second coming of Steve Jobs. Avi smirked. And we're just reshaping the future of predictive cognition. No big deal. I laughed quietly. That was Avi, grounded, brilliant, and unfazed by noise. He understood not just the tech, but the ache that came from constantly being underestimated. The pitch is locked in for Thursday, he added. Redcrest Capital wants to see the beta demo of Neural Track. If it goes well, when it goes well, I corrected. We'll have the runway to expand west, maybe even edge out Neuron Core in Q4. Neuron Core, our biggest rival, older, bigger, and funded by the very firm that rejected my resume 4 years ago. Their CEO had glanced at my portfolio and said, maybe UX design is more your lane? That email was still pinned in a folder on my laptop. Back home, I had other reminders. My cousin Eric's face beamed from framed magazine covers. His Stanford MBA thesis was proudly displayed on the bookshelf. My degrees, my patent certifications, probably in a drawer somewhere, if not recycled by accident. When I got accepted into a DARPA-adjacent AI internship in college, my uncle shrugged and asked, "Is that even paid?" When I made the dean's list twice in a row, my mom said, "Well, someone has to bring up the average." Eventually, I just stopped sharing. I hoarded my wins like secrets. I poured myself into Synapse Loop, maxed out credit cards, skipped holidays, and coded through birthdays, building something that couldn't be dismissed. Now, I stood in the conference room at Redcrest Capital, blazer stiff at the shoulders, underlighting just a bit too white. I glanced at Avi. He nodded once. We'd rehearsed this pitch a dozen times, but never with $5 million on the line. I took a breath and began, pointing to the display. As you can see from our performance data, Synapse Loop's algorithm has consistently outpaced current market prediction tools by over 27%. Their pens started moving, my voice grew steadier. This time they were listening. Gregory Redmond, the silver-haired founder of Redcrest Capital, leaned forward, steepling his fingers as he looked at me intently. And your competitors? How does Neuron Core's new suite compare? I'd expected this. Neuron Core is still relying on static behavior modeling based on historical datasets, I said smoothly. Synapse Loop tracks real-time neural engagement and emotional response patterns. I paused, letting the weight of that sink in. Simply put, they can tell you what a customer did yesterday. We can tell you what they'll do tomorrow. The energy in the room shifted instantly. Chairs creaked, pens paused, a few exchanged glances. This was it. The turning point I'd been preparing for, grinding toward, obsessing over, for 3 years. 2 hours later, Avi and I stood in the sleek marble lobby of Redcrest's downtown tower, dazed. They want to lead the round, he said, almost whispering. $90 million valuation. He turned to me, disbelief still in his voice. Jenna, we did it. I nodded slowly, still suspended in the afterglow of the moment. We need to alert legal, and the team, press, the patent advisor. My phone buzzed. Bung. For a heartbeat, I considered letting it ring, but some part of me, the dutiful daughter I hadn't quite shaken, picked up. Hi, Mom. Sweetheart, just a reminder, your uncle's retirement party is next Sunday. The whole family's coming. It'd look strange if you weren't there. You know how people talk. I'll be there. Oh, and Eric has some exciting news to share. He's being promoted to VP at the firm. You know, the one that does consulting for Amazon? Isn't that wonderful? A beat. Maybe you could bring those lemon cookies you used to make. Everyone loved those. I blinked, momentarily speechless. In one room, I had just negotiated the deal of my life, one that would put Synapse Loop on the global tech map. In the next, I was being reminded to bring cookies. For Eric. Actually, I said, my voice light, I might have some news to share too. That's nice, honey, just remember, not too much sugar, your uncle's pre-diabetic now. As she rambled on, I glanced at Avi. He arched a brow. I shook my head with a tired smile. Still the same, I mouthed. But I wasn't. That week became a blur. Lawyers, contracts, strategy calls, PR drafts. My inbox flooded. My sleep disappeared. But by Thursday morning, I was sitting at my desk, skimming the final signed term sheet. Synapse Loop was no longer a scrappy dream. We were about to become a $90 million force. If you've ever been underestimated by the people who should have believed in you the most, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens when Jenna walks into that retirement party with a secret that's about to change everything. Avi burst into my office, his usual calm traded for electric excitement. Have you seen it? He asked, practically shoving his tablet into my hands. I blinked, my vision slightly blurred after hours of squinting at term sheets. Seen what? Forbes, Business Insider, Wall Street Journal, they're all running it. I took the tablet, and there it was. My face, front and center on Forbes' homepage. The headline read, "The brain behind Synapse Loop, Jenna Rayner becomes the youngest female CEO to disrupt predictive tech." My stomach flipped. The announcement wasn't supposed to go live until next week, after the lawyers signed off on the paperwork. After I had the chance to tell my family, I skimmed the article. It covered everything: the $90 million valuation, our competitive edge over Neuron Core, the uphill climb from a Spokane basement to the national spotlight. My inbox started to vibrate non-stop as Avi opened tabs. Business Insider broke down the neural mapping technology. The Wall Street Journal focused on how our rise was shaking up traditional market analytics. But the one that stopped me cold? The Spokane Daily headline. Local engineers start up rockets to $90 million. Family never knew. They would see it. Everyone would. As if on cue, my phone exploded with messages. Old classmates, colleagues I hadn't heard from in years, even a few distant cousins with LinkedIn requests. But nothing from my mother. Nothing from my uncle. Nothing from Eric. The silence was louder than the headlines. Avi nudged me. "This is massive, Jenna. We should celebrate. Call the team. Champagne at Lava Lounge tonight?" I nodded slowly, still reeling. "Yeah, but first I need to make a call." Once he left, I stared at the phone, then hit dial. "Rainer Residence," came the clipped voice I hadn't heard in months. "Hi, it's Jenna." A pause, then my uncle's voice turned cold. "Oh, I suppose you think we're impressed, making a spectacle of yourself in the business pages." I blinked. That wasn't planned. The press jumped the gun. I was going to. Eric has been building his career the right way, quietly, respectfully. You always needed attention, lights, headlines. The sting I expected came, but something new rose with it. Fire. A show? My voice tightened. I built Synapse Loop from scratch. No favors, no family fund, no support. While you all called me a hobbyist, I was building a revolution. There was silence. "Congratulations," he said flatly. "We'll see how long it lasts before it crashes back to reality." I gripped the phone tighter. This time, I wasn't backing down. "The reality," I said, my voice steady, "is that I'm now the CEO of a $90 million company that's disrupting an entire industry. That's not just some articles. That's real." There was a pause. Then his voice dropped into that familiar patronizing cadence, the one he reserved for life lessons I never asked for. "Listen to me, Jenna. This tech wave you're riding, it'll crash. They always do. Eric's built something real, steady. You should take notes." I closed my eyes, exhaustion sweeping over me. Not from the work, but from this endless, dismissive refrain. "I have to go," I said. "I'll see you at the retirement party on Sunday." "Jenna," he started, but I ended the call before he could finish. I sat in silence for a moment, then reached for my laptop. If they couldn't recognize my worth with their words, they'd see it in results. Loud and clear. Sunday came bright and warm, the kind of early summer day that made everything feel cinematic. I hadn't called again after that last conversation. I didn't need to. The headlines had done plenty of talking for me. In the days leading up to the party, the story had exploded. Synapse Loop had been featured on CNBC. The local paper ran a full Sunday spread. I'd even been invited to speak at an upcoming tech symposium in San Francisco. Now I sat parked outside my uncle's suburban home, watching familiar faces stream through the white picket gate. Family friends, retirees from his firm, relatives who'd spent years watching me from the sidelines. I checked my reflection in the mirror, slipped on my designer sunglasses, and stepped out of my new Jaguar Phaeton. Sleek, red, and roaring like a declaration. The engine alone turned heads. From the passenger seat, I grabbed a small, elegantly wrapped gift box and closed the door with a satisfying click. "Is that Jenna?" I heard someone murmur. Cousin Nate, the car guy, paused mid-sentence, eyes wide. I tossed him the keys. "Mind parking it for me?" I smiled. "Driveway's packed." "This is the V8, isn't it?" he breathed, like I'd handed him a holy relic. "Fully loaded, carbon trim, custom finish, be gentle." As I walked toward the backyard, heads turned, conversations paused. I didn't rush. The scent of grilled ribs and fresh lavender wafted through the air. But I wasn't the same woman they used to overlook. My cream suit, deep blue silk blouse, and sleek heels spoke before I even opened my mouth. My mother spotted me first, her smile faltering as she took in the transformation. "Jenna," she said slowly, "you look different." "Thank you," I said, brushing a kiss on her cheek. "Where's Uncle Mike?" I held up the small package. "I brought him something. Stick around, because what's in that little box, let's just say, it's the moment everything shifts. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next twist." My mom gestured toward the grill, where Uncle Mai stood at the center of his universe, tongs in hand, surrounded by uncles, former co-workers, and neighbors who hung on his every word about the perfect sear. I approached the group, feeling the shift in atmosphere as conversations trailed off one by one. "Uncle Mike," I said, offering the small, neatly wrapped box. Happy retirement. He turned slowly, eyes sweeping over me from head to toe. For a second, I thought he might say something cutting, or walk away altogether. But he took the box. You didn't have to bring anything, he said, voice flat. I wanted to, I replied, meeting his gaze without flinching. 30 years. That's no small thing. A few of the men nearby exchanged looks, recognition flashing in their eyes. I could tell some of them had read the headlines, probably seen my face in their LinkedIn feeds. They looked from me to him, then back again, clearly picking up on the cool undercurrent between us. Well, he muttered, turning back to the grill without opening the box. Can't let these steaks char. Of course not, I said with a polite smile. Wouldn't want to ruin the main event. I turned away, not waiting for a response, and crossed the yard toward Eric and his wife Melissa, who stood under the patio umbrella, both watching me with thinly veiled surprise. Quite the entrance, Eric said, his signature confidence cracking ever so slightly. Nice car. Thanks, I smiled. Business seems to be going well for you too. Ma mentioned the VP title. Congrats. He opened his mouth, but Melissa jumped in first. We saw the articles, Jenna. Your company is... Honestly, it's incredible. Her voice was sincere. Curious. Not the condescension I was used to. Why didn't you ever tell anyone what you were building? I met her eyes. I did, more than once. No one was listening. Eric shifted, clearly remembering all the dinners where I'd tried to talk about my work only to be waved off or talked over. His cheeks flushed faintly. To his credit, he looked down for a beat. Well, Melissa said, pressing forward, we're definitely listening now. Everyone is. 90 million? That's no joke. I noticed the heads turning nearby. The number had caught attention. Conversations paused, forks lowered. Thank you, I said. It's been a long road, but the tech is changing the game. We're redefining how businesses understand their customers. Eric cleared his throat. I'd like to hear more, sometime. I nodded. I'd like that too. Maybe we could grab lunch sometime, Eric said, adjusting his collar. I think my firm might even be interested in implementing your system. Predictive modeling could really enhance our client segmentation. The irony hit hard. 3 years ago, I had approached Eric with early demos of Synapse Loop, hoping he'd see the potential and help me open doors. He'd waved me off, suggesting I get a few years of real-world experience first. Maybe join an established firm before playing entrepreneur. I'll have my assistant reach out, I replied smoothly. The corporate polish rolled off my tongue like second nature. We're booked through Q2, but we might be able to squeeze you in. His smile faltered. I had spoken to him not as a cousin but as a vendor, and for once the power dynamic was mine. Before he could recover, Aunt Diane swooped in, dousing me in perfume and performative affection. Jenna, darling, why didn't you tell us you were doing all this? Forbes, tech headlines. We're all so proud. The same woman who'd called my work your little computer hobbies at Thanksgiving now beamed like my lifelong supporter. I tried, I said, keeping my expression even. It just never felt like the right time to share. As the sun lowered, the entire vibe of the party shifted. Cousins and family friends who used to orbit Eric now gravitated toward me, asking about neural engagement, predictive analytics, even startup life. I answered politely, but with a kind of guarded grace. Not cold, just professional. And I could feel the shift unsettling them. I glanced toward the grill. Uncle Mike stood alone, tongs idle, still not having opened my gift. A custom engraved watch I had made with the words, "To new beginnings, love, Jenna." Eventually, as dessert trays came out, he tapped his glass with a fork. Conversations fell quiet. Thank you all for being here, he said, his voice carrying over the lawn. Retiring after 30 years. It's meaningful. Having all of you here means a lot to me and Diane. He ran through stories from his time in engineering, gave shout-outs to old colleagues, then turned toward the family. And of course, I'm proud of my children. Eric, making strides at Northwest Financial, just promoted to VP. Polite applause. Then he looked at me. And Jenna, he continued, voice tightening, who, apparently, has been quietly building something none of us fully understood. Silence fell. I always said she was the emotional one, he added, half laughing, though only a few joined in. But it seems I underestimated just how far emotional intelligence can take a person. It wasn't an apology, not even close. But it was the first time Uncle Mike had ever publicly acknowledged that he might have been wrong about me. And as the clink of raised glasses rippled across the yard, I noticed something new in the eyes of our extended family. Respect. Not surprise, not confusion, just a quiet, dawning realization that I was no longer the one who never quite fit in. The retirement party carried on into the evening under soft string lights strung through the trees. Conversations buzzed, laughter echoed off the patio walls, and I moved between groups with ease. For the first time at a family gathering, I didn't feel like a background character. I felt seen. It was subtle but powerful, the shift in energy. Cousins who once barely remembered what I did now asked me about market strategy and leadership. My aunts, once skeptical, listened intently when I explained the company culture we were building at Synapse Loop. Later I found a quiet moment alone with Uncle Mike. He stood near the edge of the yard, a glass of whiskey in hand, gazing at the flower beds my aunt had carefully cultivated over the years. "You never opened your gift," I said gently, nodding toward the box still sitting on the gift table. He looked at me, really looked this time. I was waiting for it to quiet down. I gave a small nod. Whether it was a reason or an excuse didn't matter anymore. "So," he said after a long pause, "CEO, yeah, of a $90 million company." I met his eyes. "That's right." He swirled his drink, the ice clinking softly. "And the youngest woman to do it," they said. "So, I've heard." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, just heavy, with everything unsaid over the years. "I don't understand any of it," he finally admitted. "The tech world, algorithms, predictive models. Back in my day, business was simpler. You made something, you sold it." I thought about trying to explain neural engagement data and behavioral forecasting, then stopped. "You don't need to understand the tech," I said. "Just understand that I built something real, and it matters." He nodded, slow and thoughtful. Then, with a slight smile, he tilted his head toward the driveway. "That car, that's something." I smiled. "It's not a statement, it's a thank you to myself for all the years no one else did." "Still," he said, a flicker of pride creeping into his voice, "you knew what pulling up like that would do." "Yes," I admitted. "I did." Investors, engineers, journalists, and local business leaders filled the plaza in front of our new headquarters for the ribbon-cutting ceremony, a gleaming structure of glass and steel nestled in downtown Spokane. To my surprise, my entire family showed up. My Aunt Diane was the first to greet me, pulling me into a hug tighter than I expected. "We're so proud of you, Jenna," she said softly. "I'm sorry if we didn't show it before." I returned the embrace, feeling the truth in her voice. She had always been caught between my uncle's stern dismissals and her quieter instincts to believe in me. Today, she didn't have to pick a side. Eric approached next, looking a little out of place in a sea of startup types, clutching a small gift bag and clearly overwhelmed. "This is incredible," he admitted. "Seriously, Jenna, I had no idea this is what you were building." I gave a small smile. "That's because you never asked." There was no bitterness in my tone, just honesty. The success had dulled the sting of all the years he hadn't seen me. And then there was Uncle Mike, lingering near the entrance like a guest who wasn't sure whether he belonged. He was wearing the watch I'd given him, I noticed. That alone made my chest tighten. I walked toward him, aware of the cameras clicking, the team watching. The CEO in her element. "Thanks for coming," I said. He nodded. "Wouldn't have missed it." We could have left it there, that would have been enough, but I needed to say one more thing, not for revenge, but for closure. "You know," I began, "all those times you said I was too emotional or not CEO material, it hurt." His expression shifted. Pride? Guilt? Something deeper. "But it pushed me too," I continued, "to prove you wrong." He met my gaze. "Well, you certainly did that." "Yes," I said, "I did." And just like that, standing in front of the company I had built from nothing, the logo shining behind us, I felt something release inside me. I didn't need his approval anymore. Because I had my own. I was Jenna Rayner, CEO of Synapse Loop. Visionary, builder, the architect of my future. And no one would ever call me just emotional again. If you've made it this far, thank you, truly. You've just walked with me through years of being overlooked, dismissed, and underestimated, only to come out the other side as the CEO of a $90 million company built from scratch. And if my story resonates with you, if you've ever been made to feel small in rooms where you should have been seen, then I hope you know you're not alone. I wasn't the smartest person in every room. I have the most connections. What I had was belief in something bigger than myself, and the willingness to keep building even when no one clapped. If that sounds like you, drop a comment, tell me what you're building, tell me who didn't believe in you, and tell me how you're proving them wrong, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Because I want this space to be more than just a story. I want it to be a spark. Let me tell you something I wish I had heard sooner. You don't need permission to dream big. You don't need validation to start. And you certainly don't need anyone's approval to be powerful. For years I kept my head down, hoping one day they'd notice. My family, my peers, the industry. But here's what I learned the hard way. Waiting to be noticed is a trap. The real shift happened when I stopped trying to fit their mold and started honoring mine, the emotional one, the craft girl, the hobbyist. I took every label they tried to use against me and turned it into fuel. And now, those same people sit in my boardroom asking for partnership. That's not revenge, that's growth. So here's my ask. If my story moved you, if it reminded you of your own quiet strength, then hit subscribe. Not just because it helps the channel, but because every time you do, you're saying yes to more stories like this being told. You're saying yes to grit and resilience and the kind of success that doesn't come pre-approved. And leave a comment. I read them. I want to hear how you overcame or how you're still in the middle of it, because sometimes just knowing that someone else gets it, that can keep you going another day. And if you're still building, still working in silence, while the world sleeps on you, keep going. Please. Don't wait for them to clap. Clap for yourself. Start small. Start scared. Start anyway. That's what I did. And if I can do it, so can you. I'm Jenna Rayner. I'm the CEO of Synapse Loop. But before any of that, I was just a girl with an idea, and a whole lot of people telling me I wasn't enough. Now I know better. And I hope after hearing this, you do too. We're just getting started.